June 20, 1944. High above northern France, the morning sky was a sheet of pale blue glass. Far below, the patchwork fields shimmered in sunlight, calm, untouched, and deceivingly peaceful. Then, out of the distance, a silver shape tore through the clouds, a P-47 Thunderbolt, roaring at over 400 miles per hour. At its controls sat Colonel Gabby Gabreski, the most feared American fighter pilot in Europe. Inside the cockpit, his hands moved with effortless precision, small corrections, measured breaths, no wasted motion. Below him, German Focke-Wulfs were forming up for another intercept mission. Gabreski checked his instruments, once leveled his wings, and smiled behind his oxygen mask. 3 years of combat had taught him everything he needed to know. He knew how they'd turn, how they'd climb, and where they'd try to run. And before the sun set that day, at least one of them would never fly again. Francis Stanley Gabreski was born on January 28, 1919, to Polish immigrants who had come to America with nothing but hope and determination. His father ran a small grocery store in Oil City, Pennsylvania. Life was simple, honest, but hard. From a young age, Francis was restless. He dreamed of flying, of escaping the small town and touching the clouds. He was awkward quiet and spoke English with a heavy Polish accent, something that made him an easy target at school. But it also gave him a toughness, a need to prove himself. When he saw the first newsreels of German bombers over Poland in 1939, something inside him ignited. He wasn't Polish by passport anymore, but his blood told him otherwise. He knew then that he would fight not just for America, but for the country his parents had lost. Gabreski entered Notre Dame University in 1938, where the Army Air Corps had begun recruiting young men for flight training. He signed up immediately. At first he struggled. Instructors noted that his flying was sloppy, his landings erratic. He wasn't a natural pilot, but he was relentless. Every mistake became fuel for his obsession with precision. He spent nights studying aircraft manuals by candlelight, tracing each system, each gauge, until he knew them by heart. He once told a classmate, "I may not be the best pilot yet, but I'll be the most prepared one." By 1940, he earned his wings. He was now Second Lieutenant Francis Gabreski of the U.S. Army Air Corps. When the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, America was thrown into war, and Gabreski finally got his chance. Assigned to the 45th Squadron, he was initially stationed in the United States, but news from Europe drew him eastward. In 1942, Gabreski volunteered to serve as a liaison officer with the Polish RAF squadrons in Britain, pilots who had escaped the German invasion of their homeland. Among them were men who had lost everything, homes, families, even their country, yet still fought on with fierce resolve. They flew Hurricanes and Spitfires with terrifying skill, and from them Gabreski learned what combat truly meant. They taught him how to fight not for medals, but for survival and revenge. In the bitter dogfights over the English Channel, Gabreski began to evolve. He learned to anticipate the enemy before even seeing them, to sense danger by the faintest flicker of movement in the clouds. The Polish pilots called him Gabski, and though they teased his accent, they respected his discipline. When he returned to the U.S. Army Air Forces, he was no longer just a young pilot, he was a hunter. In 1943, Gabreski joined the 56th Fighter Group under Colonel Hubert Zemke, one of the most elite fighter units in the European theater. Their aircraft was the Republic P-47 Thunderbolt, a massive machine of aluminum and firepower. At first glance, it looked too heavy to fight, but in the right hands it was a beast. With 8 50 caliber machine guns and a massive radial engine, the Thunderbolt could dive faster than anything the Germans had. Gabreski quickly saw its potential. He studied its performance charts, memorized its strengths, and designed his own combat routines. He used altitude like a weapon, always climbing higher than his opponent, waiting, then striking in a single deadly swoop. He called it the perfect American fighter, heavy, powerful, and unforgiving. By late 1943, Gabreski had mastered it completely. His flying was sharp, efficient, and coldly mathematical. He rarely fired more than a few seconds burst because he didn't miss. The air war over Europe was brutal and endless. German fighters, Messerschmitts, Focke-Wulfs, defended every bridge, every convoy, every airfield. For Gabreski, this was not chaos, it was a chess game. He would climb to 30,000 feet, scanning the horizon for movement. He'd pick a target, a lone fighter peeling off a bomber struggling to gain altitude, and dive like a thunderbolt from heaven. His gun camera footage was clinical short bursts, perfect lead 1 or 2 seconds of fire, and then a trail of smoke spiraling down. He didn't celebrate after kills. He simply marked the number on the side of his P-47 next to the name Gabby. By the spring of 1944, his score reached 20. He was now the top American ace in Europe. But Gabreski never believed in luck. He believed in control and mastering fear before it mastered him. He once told a reporter, "The moment you get excited up there, you're dead." When the Allies invaded France in June 1944, Gabreski and the 56th Fighter Group flew almost daily missions escorting bombers, strafing trains, destroying airfields. Each mission was a test of endurance. Anti-aircraft fire filled the skies like black blossoms. Every flight could be the last. On June 19th, he shot down 3 enemy aircraft in a single day, saving an entire bomber formation from destruction. The next morning, June 20th, he took off again, his eyes calm, his movements exact, like a man who understood both the beauty and cruelty of the sky. But no pilot, no matter how skilled, could control everything. On July 20th, 1944, Gabreski led a low-level strafing mission over a German airfield in Bassenheim. He spotted a line of parked Focke-Wulfs and swooped down his Thunderbolt's guns, spitting fire and tracer rounds. Explosions tore through the tarmac, but as he pulled up, the propeller blades struck the ground. The aircraft shuddered violently. Smoke poured from the engine. Gabreski tried to climb, but it was too late. He crash-landed in a nearby field, crawled from the wreckage, and ran for the woods. For 5 days he hid hungry, soaked and hunted by German patrols. He moved only at night, sleeping in ditches by day. But near the village of Koblenz, a farmer spotted him. He was captured. Gabreski spent the next 10 months as a prisoner of war at Stalag Luftwaffe, a German camp for captured pilots. Even in captivity, he led organizing escape plans, teaching new prisoners survival tactics, and keeping morale alive in a place designed to break men. When the camp was liberated in 1945, he walked out with his head held high. He had entered the war as a young pilot. He left it as a legend. When Gabreski returned home, the war had made him a hero. 28 confirmed kills, 300 combat missions, and every major American decoration for valor. But like all warriors, peace made him restless. He found civilian life dull, predictable, empty. Flying was no longer just a job, it was who he was. So when the Korean War began in 1951, Gabreski didn't hesitate. At 32, he climbed back into a cockpit, this time the F-86 Sabre, America's first great jet fighter. The enemy now flew MiG-15s, fast, sleek Soviet-built killers. The age of propellers was over, but Gabreski's instincts remained perfect. He adapted instantly. He used the same principles: altitude, energy, patience, precision. In a world of supersonic speeds, his calm still gave him the edge. By the time he left Korea, he had added 6 jet kills to his record. He was one of the few pilots in history to become an ace in 2 wars. After his service, Gabreski continued his career in the U.S. Air Force, eventually commanding entire wings of jet fighters. But he never lost the humility of the small-town boy from Oil City. He mentored young pilots, teaching them the lessons of the old war, not just tactics, but discipline, self-control, and respect for the machine. He told them, "A good pilot flies with his hands. A great one flies with his mind." When he finally retired in 1967, he had logged over 5,000 flight hours, spanning from propellers to jets. He lived a long, quiet life with his wife Kay and their 9 children, a family as large as the sky he once ruled. Gabreski passed away in 2002 at the age of 83. At his funeral, fellow pilots described him not as the loudest or the bravest, but as the most consistent. The man who never lost focus, never gave in to fear, and never once let ego cloud judgment. Today, the name Francis Gabby Gabreski is carved into aviation history. His 28 aerial victories in Europe remain unmatched by any other American pilot of that theater. But his legacy is not just in numbers. It's in the discipline of modern air combat, in the calm, methodical thinking that every fighter pilot still trains to master. He was the son of immigrants who fought tyranny for 2 nations, a man who turned precision into survival and survival into legend. When the skies over Europe turned into the deadliest battlefield in history, Gabreski did not fight with rage. He fought with control, and in that control he found victory.